What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all of that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced, but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. And use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ask Junglr. I am so stoked today. I have not one special guest, not two special guests, but three special guests who are going to be helping answer your Amazon advertising questions. So by the way, if this is your first time joining in, I want to say a huge welcome. And I know we get a lot of people who are coming back every single week and asking more Amazon ad questions, which honestly, super flattered. The fact that you guys find value is why I continue to do this every single week. So quick intro, by the way, if this is your first time like joining in, running across this live stream. Hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ad agency called Junglr. So our focus is around Amazon ads, hence the topic of this broadcast. Hey, so drop your Amazon advertising questions into the chat. We pull them up. We get answers to your questions. But without further ado, I want to bring up our special guests because, again, a lot of them and really good friends of mine who are all amazing in their own right about Amazon advertising. And I'm going to show you why, if this stream is valuable, if you really like this and these kinds of formats, you're really going to love what they're putting together, but we'll talk about that in a second. So first up, I'm going to bring up Gonza. He is founder of Z Square and also member of Core Community, which if you haven't heard about that, you totally should. Brent, head of Sellerplex, also member of Core Community and founder, and Michael Core, and also an amazing podcast and a lot of learning put out by Michael as well. So welcome, guys. Appreciate you guys joining in today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Liz.
Yeah.
What's going on, Liz?
Awesome. Let's go over. So I know the one thread, well, multiple threads that kind of connect us all. One of them is that we all share a love of Amazon advertising. So I'm sure there's going to be a wealth of knowledge dropped on this stream as well, which, by the way, if you haven't dropped an Amazon ad question, the way these typically work is that a couple questions will come in the beginning, and then a lot of times we get a flood of questions at the end, which is fine. But we got about an hour, and you'd be surprised how fast that hour goes. Other things that are awesome about bringing on guests is Gonza also runs his own brands. So we got some broader knowledge to the stream today. Typically, we just field Amazon ad questions because that's my area of expertise. And the other thing is Brent is getting a lot into like AMC and DSP and all those really cool technical stuff, which I can jam out a little bit on. Brent's way more in the weeds than I am. So if anyone's got like a super technical like DSP question, AMC, how are you using it? Super, super excited for this. But I also want to share, you guys are doing something amazing that I think is very different than anything else in the space. So again, if you get a lot of value from these streams, if you're like, oh man, it's so awesome to be able to like come ask questions, get answers to my questions, and really like get some very high level knowledge when it comes to Amazon advertising. That's what core community is all about. Although, Michael, do you want to explain a little bit about what core is?
Yeah, I mean, we started core probably early 2023, and it's a place that I go to every single week. We have an ongoing mastermind. It's an hour, and we're either sharing like a new system or SOP that we've created, or we're doing like masterminding where we are sort of addressing a problem and everyone shows up and tries to contribute to solve this problem. So it's really a place that I go to stay sharp on Amazon advertising. And for me, it's been invaluable.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when you were originally approaching me about like launching this, one of the things I'm like, oh, I love how this has made sort of those high level communities very, very accessible, because like I'm obviously good friends with you, Brent, Gonza now. And I'm like, okay, so when I have a question, I have like 5 or 6 people I can immediately message and tap into to kind of be like, hey, what is your team doing for this? What is going on with this? But you've kind of, you created a space where that's accessible. Again, you're looking for just, that this is a very high level group. So this is for very qualified, serious brands. Not that you can't be a beginner and join, but it's not going to be like, hey, what's a match type? What's an ad? Because there's a lot of beginner knowledge. This is like super tactical, dive deep into the weeds, dissect everything. And I know that I've gained so much insights from being a part of core for sure.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Liz, actually, about the level, because core is really like intermediate to advanced. Like we don't really have as much of a focus on beginner level, because quite frankly, like Amazon certifications are like pretty good. And there's a lot of super podcasts out there or live events like yours here. So there's really no need for someone to have like a beginner level stuff and come in core. We're definitely more intermediate to advanced. And that's kind of the tone that we take on the calls. And that's the kind of tone of the community in general. That's the kind of questions that pop up and discussions that are held.
Yeah, absolutely. And because not only do you all have experience in Amazon advertising, but experience across multiple different brands. So that's the value of like, say you're a brand owner and you're like, oh, I'm operating at a high level, but I'm, I can barely keep up with just like my current SOPs. Like you all bring like just not only the knowledge of the advertising, but also how do you lead teams? How do you train teams? How do you like really doing it? And, it's one thing to have somebody on your team and in your corner. It's another thing to have somebody in your team in your corner and train up somebody who's like as high level. And I know you guys have all done that. So definitely. I dropped a link in the chat. If you are on LinkedIn, unfortunately, does not allow me to drop links in the chat on LinkedIn. I don't know what's going on over there. But if you would like a link to this, or you definitely can check it out. All of us are on LinkedIn. I know Core's on LinkedIn. You can definitely go. I would highly recommend if you're like, hey, I find a lot of value. I'm always trying to keep up with the latest and greatest, or would like a place to ask questions with Core. You definitely have like the weekly calls, but there's also a forum as well. I know that's been really valuable when you're like, hey, let me just like get in, ask this ad question. I know our teams found valuable that. So looks like we got a couple questions in the chat. So really looking forward to it. Again, form of this, drop an Amazon ad question into the chat. I'm going to pull it up and we will get answers from not just me today, but some other really awesome Amazon ad minds. So the first question is, this is a good question. It's more around launches. What is the right approach in terms of ads for a newly launched brand on Amazon? Anyone want to take it? Take a shot at it first?
I can take it.
Go for it.
So my first advice would be the same way you eat an elephant, right? One piece at a time.
Yeah.
So I would say very carefully today, because there's a lot of resistance from the A9 algorithm to show your ads. You need to prove yourself in many ways. So I don't think there's a right approach. Number one, I don't want to be vague with the answer. I think there are many good approaches, not just a singular right one. But it has a lot to do with the type of product that you're trying to launch. So I would say if you have a very original product or something very different that you can sell, even if you lose a little bit of money per unit, you can sell at a very, very competitive price. Then your CTR, your conversion rate will be higher than the average new product. Amazon has that information. So if you can prove yourself against Amazon's history for new products in that niche, in that browse node, then by creating velocity with the right type of ad, and we can discuss what that is or what those are, that's the way to go. If you have a very generic product, it might take you a little bit more time. My approach, I'll split this in two. If you have a generic product or a Me Too product in a category, something that looks like, another 4 or 5 competitors, I would try to soft launch. We're doing that very successfully with our brands. A soft launch is that it's the one that takes time, a lot of time. You do a Vine participation, you get those first 20, 30 reviews, or 15 to 25 reviews, let's say, and then you start investing in ads, in sponsor products mainly, targeting. I would use phrase much for now in the very, very beginning. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but it gives you a little bit more of an exploratory phase of, let's say, 4 or 5 weeks. It gives you access to lower CPCs. If you're very good with negation, then it kind of behaves like a exact match campaign. But in those first 4 or 5 weeks, it helps with indexation as well. So I would do that for a generic product, and then start adding product targeting and auto for sure in the beginning, close match auto. And that's pretty much it. And I'll be playing every day with the bits. What you want to see is a constant increase in impressions over time and in clicks. Since you don't have a very different product, and maybe you're not winning on price either, you don't have the reviews to sustain, quick ranking strategies, then it might take you a couple of months for you to start getting sales or sustain daily sales. And then after that, you can see a little bit of growth, or you can start pushing a little bit more aggressively on those bits. But if you have a very good product, then I would be very aggressive with sponsored products. I would probably launch some sponsor brand video campaigns as well. Those are the ones that will probably kill your launch strategy with the other product that we were discussing before, because you'll drain dollars everywhere with those. But if you have a very good product that people want, then be a little bit more aggressive, and be ready to, if you break even, great, but you might have negative profit for the first 2 or 3 weeks. After that, you should be less aggressive, because otherwise you're not going to see the return on your investment. But since it's a very good product that people are buying, I would be very careful also with discounting the product from the beginning. I would actually price it properly, and that's another whole different discussion. But if you have something very good, no, because we live in a world with our brands that if we come out of the gate at a very low price, then it's very hard for us to show that product differentiation. And consumers are in many ways very smart, so they are willing to pay a little bit more for something that's unique. So be careful with don't go necessarily with the lowest price at launch. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Try your ideal price first, and even a little bit higher, so then you can create a strike-through element there. And that's what I would do. If it's a consumable, obviously, as soon as you can get it into the subscribe and save, better. Launch with with the biggest coupon that you can for subscribe and save first order, maybe 25-30%. That helps too. And that's what I would do.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Did Brent or Michael, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would add a little bit of one element I would also add is just like you want to reverse engineer where you're going to be in a few weeks or in a few months. So one thing I like to do is I like to look at a lot of competition, like market analysis, like if you are just launching a product, that means like you're in last place currently. And obviously like stair step your way, like work your way up the ladder, like take a look at the middle of the pack, take a look at their keywords. And there's lots of different things that you can do to do this, whether it be, product opportunity explorer or brand analytics or like data dive or Helium 10 or Jungle Scout or whatever. And you're trying to basically reverse engineer your way from where you are to there. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to just try to sprint towards search terms that you have an above average conversion rate for. So you might notice search terms that have like high CTR, low conversion rate. It's probably some kind of misalignment with that keyword. You might have some other things that have a high conversion rate, and those are the places you're going to want to double down on. So as soon as you identify terms that you have a strong conversion rate, and there's lots of ways to determine that, you can just take the highest converting term in your advertising account, or you can use something like brand analytics or search query data to try to identify those things and then sprint towards that. And that's one thing that I would add too, is like you want to look at all the term that you're appearing for in terms of like the search volume for it, how relevant it is to your product, how you're going to convert for that term, which will also be a big indicator of how easy it's going to be to rank for that product. So sort of reverse engineering that, I think, is another helpful way to approach like individual keyword targeting.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm going to pull up just really quick. If you go to our website, by the way, if anyone's wondering about product launch strategy, if you go to resources, you go to product launch strategy, we actually give away our entire ad strategy, which is like a 32 pages. It took me an entire weekend and a half to write. So if anyone wants to steal this, feel free. That's a pretty helpful resource. I literally go through like setup, keyword research, all of the above. But I love what Gonza said, because I have gotten people reach out. Like the product launch strategy that we go after is where it's like, it is very aggressive, very differentiated, like you are hitting it hard out of the gate. But I love the nuance that Gonza had given, like, hey, okay, sometimes, if it's a Me Too product or something, like a more aggressive strategy may not work, which is why I think it's so really great to have access to a resource like Core, because there's the universally quote best practice. And then there's when you maybe haven't launched with like that great of a listing, or the product isn't as differentiated as you thought, and you really have to pivot there. The pivot's normally like, okay, so what is working? How do I understand that? How do I double down on that? And that's what I think, like having a really good just sort of resource, coach at your back to help you walk through those scenarios is really crucial. Yes, Suleiman saying best people in one place. Absolutely. We got some heavy hitters on the call today. I'm really excited. I love the nuance of answers you get when there's more brains in the room. Joseph wondered, this is a great question. Again, a lot of questions are on product launches, which is honestly what made me do the resource. I'm like, great, I'm getting so many questions on product launches. But here's a question. So when you're launching PPC for a variation listing, caveat here is you have no idea which color, which side would do best. I would love to hear how you guys approach it, because I know we deal with a lot of variations, but what is your all strategy for new product, ton of variations, no idea which one's going to convert?
We had an hour in this 2 weeks ago. Core.
Yeah, we spoke.
Yeah.
So
and
we
Mike
actually
spoke about it yesterday, actually, too.
Nice.
Yeah, we actually inside Core, we actually just built an SOP for campaign organization, like how to organize your products and your keywords and your search terms appropriately. And I think that the first thing that I'll say is campaign structure should be considered something that you look at and tweak and optimize over time, just like you would a bid. So like that's the first thing. And you use the data feedback loop, like you will either see some things that tell you to segment more or see things that tell you to segment less, to like group things back up. So for example, the general rule to follow is like products go in their individual ad group in an individual campaign. So like one product per ad group per campaign, unless you have a certain amount of, unless you have certain conditions that would tell you to group them together. So color and size is an obvious reason. And if you follow that protocol of like every product should be by itself, even parent and children should be by itself at the start, you'll automatically account for like the color and size variation. Now, obviously you're going to get into situations like, imagine you're selling t-shirts. The t-shirts are going to be incredibly similar. So like you'll probably segment too far if you take a t-shirt that you have 6 sizes for and you're segmenting all of them out from the get-go. So you want to sort of balance this appropriately. And you can often use data feedback loops. So let's say you are selling a t-shirt and you have 50 t-shirts that you're selling and every single t-shirt has 6 sizes. That would be a wild account. And you would end up with all these different ad groups that have very, very little data. So what you want to do is you just want to be thoughtful about when to group things and when to split them up. And that's sort of the mental protocol to follow. Like you want things segmented as possible, unless there's a reason to group them. So like similar search terms are going to trigger the same thing, similar levels of performance. Every search term that's appearing for this ad group will be relevant. And if those things are generally true, you're going to want to group them. Generally what happens in practice, you'll end up with places where you group things and places where you segment them out. So for example, that specific term, like if I'm selling a red version, obviously that red keyword only applies to the red version. So that's like segmented out. And then I negate it in the other place, which has all the products in it, right? So like you want to always be thinking, do I need to group this up more or do I need to group this up less? And that's generally the protocol there. And this is very common when you get into people who sell hundreds of like similar products. You know, imagine Nike's Amazon account. Like Nike sells how many basketball shoes, how many running shoes, how many t-shirts. Like they're making considerations about what gets grouped together and what gets segmented out. Very specific terms, very specific ad groups, perhaps grouped terms, grouped product ads. So like there's a lot of consideration that goes into it.
Yeah. No,
yeah, Mike, to build on that, actually, I do hope that Nike is listening to someone smart like us, because they've had a very mixed history with Amazon, haven't they? I know they're back on the platform now recently. But I've always seen structure as something that flows up from search intent. So if you find, and this is something you might find, Joseph, the one asking the question here, in time that you have a huge amount of search demand for the red variation of something, which is something that maybe will only be revealed to you with data and a bit of time, then you say, oh, okay, in this case, like Mike said, it depends. We need to build maybe a separate campaign to handle the budget just for the red related keywords and searches for this product or variation. We've worked a lot with apparel over the years at Pathfinder, my previous company. We still work with a lot of apparel. So we're constantly encountering this. Another thing is price variations. So you might have like food, and it might be like, the small, medium, large pack of like, caramel popcorn or something, right? And it's the small one that's the low price. And so that will drive a lot of clicks. But once people land, they realize that the medium and the large are the better value. And so they actually will buy those. But if in isolation, they just see the small popcorn, if they just see the large one that's the most expensive, they're going to say, well, I mean, why is that $25? I'm looking for something that's more like 12, and all the competition is 12 in the ads. So you're using the lower priced one to get them in the door, and then they're buying, they're upselling themselves essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic points, which again, have a resource. So that's essentially, by the way, in that launch system, this is the crazy document, but that's exactly kind of what we do, because we also deal with a lot of apparel. And so there, what we've found is that, again, when you're launching, you have literally no idea what's going to perform. We will group them. But to Michael's point, I see the way in which we've sort of talked about it is like, if you have variations that almost kind of have their own sub-market that they're going after, like it's a segment of the market. And like, you'll see this, you know, where an example would be, I was talking with a brand the other day and they sell like a specialty type of scissors, but there's like different shapes and variations of them. I'm like, these products actually serve like completely different avatars. So in that case, like somebody who's looking for this type of shears is not looking for the small type of shears. It's actually a completely different function. So they are kind of like separate products. I think the only nuance I would add to what everyone else has said, because again, 100% in agreement, is that when we are launching, obviously you have zero data. As you get the data, you can start, you know, pausing the underperforming variations, because you will find that one variation, whenever it shows in search, like Brent was saying, like the large one, it just never really works for the ads. As long as those are variations, or you have one active ad for one of the variations, you're still going to get traffic to that listing. It's still going to benefit from whatever advertising you're doing on the other products. Where you want to be careful of that is like if you're grouping products that are on different parent listings, which by the way, I would honestly almost never do that. But if you were, and then say you paused one and then there was no traffic going to that parent because you haven't really done good segmentation, then that's only when you would run into trouble, I think. All right, let's see. I'm saying thank you for valuable insights. That was on our launch strategy, so you're very welcome. Glad you guys are finding this valuable. All right, we're trying to try and roll through these ones because they're coming in. Gonza, I don't know if you have any insights on this one. It's not technically an ad question, but he was saying noticing changes to a subcategory. So it was 5 in the bestseller ranked, but now at 40. Like, would you try and change the subcategory back? Would you just roll? Yeah.
Yeah, I would. The problem is there is an issue in the first place. So Amazon is changing the browse node, and you need to identify why that is, if it's an actual issue or if it's correct. Sometimes you want to force yourself into a category because it's advantageous, like this one. You have like bestseller badge or something there. But sometimes it's just, you know, you trying to get that badge in a category that's not that relevant to your product, and then Amazon will continue to do that. Every time Amazon kicks you out of the category, my son is in the background, hijacking my dog or something. Every time that happens, you lose your BSR, not only in that browse node, but in the general marketplace. So it does affect your overall ranking, rankings in general. So you might be, you know, careful with requesting browse node changes where, you know, it's not going to we call it, it's not going to stick, right? Every week you have the same problem. So that's the first thing that you need to identify. But if you are fighting a good fight for the right browse node, I would, you know, take it to the end, fight it to the end. Yeah.
Good call. This is a particularly pertinent question because I think it also kind of applies to post Prime Day as well. This is a 2-part question, but Ashley is saying we had Father's Day in the UK a few days ago. The products are selling really good giftable products. However, I noticed after the current performing campaigns have become less efficient, I'm guessing due to the lower buyer intent. So I'm not sure if I should wait for things to recover on their own or if I should go in and optimize given the short look back window of ad data. So it's like post-holiday season, everything was going well, and then conversion rates tank, ad performance tanks because of that. What is your all's strategy kind of around that?
Yeah, can I jump in on this one briefly? Yeah. I think you have, you know, leading indicators and lagging indicators in advertising, right? So what's a leading indicator? It's going to be your click-through rate and the conversion rate that you're seeing now versus the run up to Father's Day. Also Father's Day here in France, and I believe in America too. It's all the same day, even though Mother's Day is for some reason different. But, you know, we see all kinds of trends like this in accounts that, you know, we work with over the years. It's just seasonality for some categories is the blessing and the curse. We worked many years with chocolate sellers, and that was always, you know, crazy in the summer and amazing during Thanksgiving into Christmas period, right? So looking at last year's data and trying to extrapolate a little bit from that too. I don't know, Ashley, if you have last year's data to look at. Maybe you can look at competitors and see how they're doing as well. Is it kind of a wave that rises all the boats and then it crashes and everyone kind of suffers the same? Or is there something in particular about your listing that is now suffering and therefore the ad performance is not like looking as good? So what's happening in the wider ecosystem? What does last year's data say? Those are probably good places to start. And what are your leading indicators? So, conversion rate, click-through rate. I mean, there is a 7 to 14 day attribution window on Amazon, depending on what ad product you're using. But yeah, that's a lagging indicator. That comes a little bit later.
Really good insights. Michael or Gonza, you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course. To be expected, right? Leaving a hot period like Father's Day and then going into a normal period or off-peak time, there's probably will be, if you have a giftable product, if you had giftable keywords, there's going to be a natural drop in conversion rate and ROAS. Not to say that anything is bad. Again, it's that sort of like feedback loop, right? So like as you're getting some data that indicates that performance is going down, then you'll want to take some appropriate action. But at the same time, I wish it was clearer inside Amazon what your normal attribution delay is. But somebody clicks on the 1st of the month and then purchases on the 10th of the month, that will eventually almost be sent back in time to the 1st of the month for you and like improve the ACoS on the 1st of the month. That being said, like if this was a seasonal period, it's not as if like that's probably not happening because someone, if it's for Father's Day, then they bought it already and then it's shipped and that's the end of it. So yeah, some considerations there. And I would also say that, what Brent said too, year-over-year data, quite valuable. But yeah, I would probably say it would make sense to put your foot off the gas, potentially onto the brake to sort of slow down some of this bidding because the conversion rate is lower. And you can also check Product Opportunity Explorer too, and that will actually tell you what really quick, it's a little imperfect, but it will tell you directionally what the conversion rate is doing in your niche, which is helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's super helpful. And then the other thing I would add to that, Ashley, is I think the worry when you're going into like optimize. So I think there is kind of a consensus agreement as long as the data is telling you some optimization needs to happen. But I think the worry is that, oh no, I'm going to like screw something up and screw up my sales. So whenever we're going like post-period optimizations or any optimizations whatsoever, we'll always segment the intent of the campaigns because you're going to have those campaigns like my exact match high volume ranking strategy campaigns are not equal to my low bid autos. Like they are both serving the product, but one, I'm going to have way more potential detriment to the product and the performance if I pull back too hard on that versus, maybe that random long tail keyword that gets a hit every so often. And for some reason it's getting clicks now. So I would definitely recommend as you go through things, pay attention to the intent and the strategy behind the campaign. And our default is always going to be to optimize less aggressively when it's a very quote important campaign, or we are okay with sort of sustaining a higher ACoS on something if we know that it's leading to greater market share. Where we're not okay with sustaining that is if we know it's not a market share. But an example would be like a audience sponsored display campaign. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Is that going to give me market share? No. So if it's running at high ACoS, like we will be very aggressive with the optimizations versus, again, like our ranking strategy campaigns. This is a good question. I'd love to get out of the box for this one because Ashley's asking, can you share any Prime days that most sellers are not doing? Because I know we all have like, okay, so clean up your account, make sure you're being aggressive, coupons and deals are great. What is like your guys' like next level Prime Day strategy? I
have one that's so simple. Nobody thinks about it. And most sellers are not doing it. So it fits your question, Ashley, very well. And the answer is nothing, do nothing. Most sellers are doing things. So we have one of our brands. We don't do anything for Prime Day because it just doesn't respond very well. It's not it doesn't sell products that people need to spend a lot of money on, or it's a consumable, and it's normally not something that you want to use your budget for Prime Day on, right? So you want to buy that TV and you want to buy other things, not maybe, I don't know, something that you use every day. So we do nothing there. And if we increase pricing, we see a very, very good return on our efforts because you're riding the high CVR Prime event, right? So you get higher CTR, higher CVR, lower ACOS. We see that trend in this brand also. So if you want to increase your pricing there just a little bit, not to fall off, the entire ecosystem for those days, but that we normally see really good results there. The other thing that most sellers don't do is think about the cost of their inventory and what they can get out of Prime Day. So what we see very often, which is what most sellers do, is they try to sell as much as they can. Sometimes because they are sales driven, sometimes because they don't want to derank, or lose ranking for after the event. So after the event, they expect to be where they were before, business as usual. And sometimes if you're not running coupons or deals, you lose a little bit of steam, and that is true. So most people concentrate and focus on sales, but they don't really measure the impact that has on capital. So if your regular sales velocity is 40 units a day, and then during those days you sell 200 a day, well, you burn through a lot of capital just to maybe get 4 or 5% profit, which is not really efficient, right? So if you do nothing, you will have maybe 50 sales a day, 55, because of the increased traffic to the platform. And you might end up with, 25, 30% margin, where your normal margin might be 20. So even if you increase your prices a little bit. So the decision has to be made based on, is it a good idea for me to sell 3-4 times the amount of units that I sell on a regular day? Yes, no. What is the margin that I expect to get out of this compared to my daily margin, or even a margin that would come from increasing pricing by maybe 10, 15%. And then make a decision based on that. It's out of the box because everyone is discounting. Amazon wants you to discount. If you have anyone, a representative on Amazon that takes care of your account, every opportunity they bring is based on some sort of discount. But counterintuitively, if you sell more at a higher price, you make more money, period. Right? We try to discount as little as we can during these events. And during Q4, we try to sell as high as we can.
No, I like that. I do have a one tip as well, kind of piggybacking off of what Gonza is saying as well. But I might hijack this question because I have you all here captive, and I'm would really love to know. Do you all have any thoughts about the fact, we got used to Prime Day, then Amazon threw October Prime Days in us, and those actually have recently been doing well. But now they're throwing a 4-day Prime Day at us, which we're going into it okay, it used to be okay, I'm discounting for 2 days, but now we have a 4-day stretch. Do you guys have any, how do you guys think that's going to do? Or will it do anything?
I think it's diluting the brand, if I'm totally honest. I think having 2 primes a year is fine, but I think extending it kind of kills some of the urgency in the sense of I need to go and check out the deals now, to just being some background noise. And obviously Amazon has no control over this, but every other retailer, I've read studies on this, sees a lift on Prime Day. More people go to Walmart and Target on Prime Day because they're curious about what Walmart and Target are doing. They're trying to counter program against what Amazon is doing. So it's 4 days of that now as well. So it's true. Amazon has unintentionally made a buying holiday for other retailers, which is interesting to think about.
Yeah, I guess that was my thought, is if everyone's waiting for deals, it used to be, although, what is it? The first day, I believe is the biggest. And I think the second day I'm trying to remember the lift. I think it was first day was the largest, and then second day slightly down. So I'm wondering if it's going to be the same or if it's just going to dilute across all 4 days. I'm not.
That sounds like a good data question we could probably pull together for Core. I mean, maybe we could do some group data study for that. I mean, I know we've built dashboards over the years to see. For us, it was typically day 2 that was the bigger spending day. Day 1 was better on ACOS, but day 2 is bigger spending. That's how it has been historically. But now it's 4 days. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
No
we're definitely gonna have to watch that. With that, Ashley, I'll give you a tip that we have found is best, especially if you're not running any deals. Is we typically, I wouldn't want to say never, because there's going to be like those very strategic, like this specific campaign, but strategically, we typically do not adjust upwards for bids. I know in the past there was that, like, okay, increase all bids. What we found is that kind of just destroys profits. And then what we do is we definitely increase budgets. So I would recommend focusing more on budgets, less on bids. And a tip on budget that actually was developed by one of my account managers, I'm like, that's freaking genius, is what they'll actually do, because business reports is real time, ad sales are not. So the problem that we find is that when you're doing adjustments in real time, which you need to be doing, you're kind of flying blind in some ways. But what she was doing is you can go into business reports, and business reports data is real time. And so if you can look at the sales lift, so if you know, okay, so on average, my total A cost is like 10%, 12%. And I know that I spend X, Y, Z, and typically to get this many sales to achieve that. So if spend is this, you can kind of look at A cost. And so if you know that your sales are exceeding your averages by XYZ%, if you want to make sure that you stay within total A cost range, you can check it. So if you go in and check and you're like, okay, halfway through the day, my sales are only on average about where I normally am, then I'm going to be more careful with how I increase budgets versus, oh, wow, my sales are seeing a ginormous lift. I can be much more confident. Again, you're still kind of flying blind a little bit, but it does create a more strategic way to be more confident about increasing budgets.
I like that, especially because sometimes we have very high ACOS during these events because of the attribution, and then we keep fueling, putting fuel into the machine just because we know there's an attribution issue. But maybe reverse engineering that tacos, like you just mentioned, that's a good idea to at least be, comfortable doing it.
Yeah, at least have an idea. Or if you're using like a account cap that some accounts use, doing like half in the beginning of the day, allowing that to run, and then like refueling towards the end of the day is something else that we'll do.
Yeah, and using Amazon Marketing Stream, shout out to Amazon for putting that together. And I think it doesn't get talked about enough, but we have for years used that as some tools, part of some tools that we've used, because it like allows you to see fairly real time ish budget expenditure. And during Prime or other peak things, that's when it's most useful. Because like day to day, you're not really like fussed if like, okay, it's a random Thursday and like one campaign's out of budget. But there are times in Prime where a client will, pick up the phone and like lose their mind if they see a campaign out of budget. So it's really nice to have like, oh boy, we know this is running up. I just wanted to actually give one piece of feedback for the Prime Day. This is something that I've encountered just recently with a client that we took on for DSP. This is a very out of left field strategy. Radio advertising. Radio advertising is unbelievably cheap now in America. I can't speak to the UK or other countries. And you can get like basically like CPMs, like, how many people, thousands of people are listening to it. And this company is not on Amazon, but they sell physical products. They are killing it with radio advertising. It is their number one channel. You get a 45-second or 45-second or 1 minute spot radio. It's cheap. Do that for a few weeks before Prime. I know it's too late now because we're already in like mid-June, but that's a very out of left field idea. So just putting it out there.
I love it.
Most sellers are not doing it.
That's cool.
Most sellers are definitely not doing it. Which again, I'll pull up, by the way, if you've missed it. So those kind of strategies, Brent, Gonza, Michael, definitely they have I would say a high level. They're saying it's intermediate to advanced mastermind group called Core, where they drop strategies like that all the time. So I would definitely recommend if you're looking to up level your Amazon advertising experience or just like stay cutting edge, that is like let's say only group to get that from. It might be
one of the very, very few, and probably the most selective one, because we keep it very tight, very high level.
Yeah.
The other thing that's definitely needs to mention here too is just Amazon Marketing Cloud retargeting for sponsored products during this time too. So like there's a boost of traffic that you'll get, and being able to target people that have looked at your product but have not purchased your product during Prime Day it's pretty cool to that's sort of worth going after.
Yeah. This is a hard question on ranking, and again, more launch questions. It looks like this one's a two-parter, but when you launch a product, how do you estimate which keyword is already relevant and will rank or not based on data? Fun fact, you can't because you have no data, but I'm sure we'll get into this. So by the way, you don't just take relevant with good search volume and run with it. So let's say you have 100 high search volume keywords. How do you choose them? And let's say have similar search volume and relevancy. So how do you predict what will rank in the honeymoon launch and will not? It's not a bad question. I would love to know the answer as well.
But can we discuss relevancy for a little bit?
Yes,
so we're all on the same page on that, because relevancy, I think it has two different meanings, right? One, is it relevant to the product in terms of user intent? Is a user typing red shirt, medium size, relevant to your black XL shirt? No, right? So that's one relevancy. The other relevancy is what Amazon considers relevant, right? So you have the search query, right, that comes from the customer, and then they're going to tie your product's performance to that in terms of level of interest, CTR, in terms of time on page, in terms of number of orders, average order value, and conversion rate, right? Those are the things. And sales velocity, daily sales velocity. They will draw that conclusion. Okay, people typing red shirt, medium, most often end up buying this product more than the rest of the competitors in the same category. So that's real relevancy in terms of Amazon. Now, for that, you need what in the question we know he doesn't have. He doesn't have the data, and Amazon doesn't have the data. So the first one that you can use, the only one that you can use in the beginning, is the user intent or the search intent relevancy. So you sort that list of 100 keywords in how relevant they are in terms of the user intent. Then you might want to make a little bit of do a little bit of research, right? And you type them. You type the ones that are the most relevant, which are the ones that you need to push anyways, or push more aggressively anyways. And you see what the other products are. What's the medium price point? You might get away with selling something at a much higher price, but normally, and there are exceptions, but normally you need to be within 10, 15%, up to 20% lower or higher price point. Why? Because if you're cheaper, then Amazon doesn't really want to sell your product. They make more money selling something else. So if page one, the first, let's say 10 positions, organic positions, they look good for your product, those are relevant keywords for your product, and you should be very aggressive on those. Now, are you going to rank for them organically in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks? It depends on so many factors. But do you have a chance? Yes. Those are the only ones that you might have a chance to rank, unless proven otherwise. And that happens with data, when the data starts to pour in. And I would say you need 2, 3 weeks for that anyways, for the relevant to be relevant, right? Which is number of clicks and CTR, data volume.
Yeah. No, I love that question, how you define it through the eyes of Amazon, and then also through like just our eyes on relevancy. And that's 100%. What I would say is that everything in advertising, regardless how good you are, like I could go in, like I can go into an account and be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Like I can read the data and then just look at keywords. I'm like, oh, that's why that's not working really well, because this makes no sense. Like it's second nature at this point, because I've been doing it for so long, and I'm sure everyone here is like the same thing. You're like, I get, it's almost like an intuitive understanding. So like our teams have that, and so they can pick really good launch keywords. But even I don't care how freaking good you are, there have been keywords, one that just surprised me. Like there was one product that we were advertising, and I'm like, this keyword has like 100,000 search volume. I don't really think it makes any sense to go after this, but you know what? This product is very differentiated and it's at a fantastic price point. Let's try it. And like that keyword was fantastic. We were ranking within like a couple weeks. But there's other times where we'll pick a keyword like, oh man, this makes total sense. Our price point's there. This should resonate with the market. And they're like, I'm getting clicks and there's no conversions.
Yeah.
And so that's where data analysis comes in. So like, I mean, what Gonza said is you pick your best bets. You pick what you feel is going to have the most chance of working, and then you test it. And then I think the key to that is just rapid feedback loops. Like as soon as like I always struggle when someone's like, oh yeah, we set it up and then we don't touch it for like 2 weeks and then just see what happens. Like, okay, yeah, like don't over optimize. Obviously you need to get enough clicks to know if it does or doesn't convert, but like that doesn't mean just like hands off the wheel for 2 weeks. I mean, go check it, go look at it, poke around.
Could I add to this question too? I think if you look at the question that's on the screen, it's like high search volume and relevant.
Yeah.
There's more things that you could add to this list of keywords that you have. Like think of like a competition profile, meaning for these keywords, what's the, title density of the current things that rank there. And potentially you can have a better title density for those particular keywords. What is the total amount of reviews and sales that you see for these things? That like if it's higher, then it increases the competitiveness. What is I already mentioned review rating, but like what is the price? Gonza mentioned pricing. How competitive is my pricing on this thing? So like there is some more research that you can do at this stage, even before you launch, and think of it like you're trying to develop your own calculation for like competitiveness and like you're listing those extra things. It's not just search volume. It's not just whether or not it's relevant, which might be like a binary yes or no. You can also add in other things even before you launch, ultimately sprinting to the point where you can discover, do I have a better conversion rate than everybody else? Once you do, then that's your most likely thing, because that overshadows everything else, because like title density is only all that stuff, like review count, title density, pricing, all that stuff is really just a prediction of whether or not you'll have a better than market conversion rate. So I would say those are the things. Like you have some more research to do, Mr. or Mrs. Politics.
Yeah. No, I like that. I appreciate you adding, which is why it's awesome to have one more. I know I keep talking about it, but if you like having more level heads on questions like this, definitely recommend going and checking out Core. But yeah, again, it's not I hope you don't feel that like we've said like, oh, this is, you don't know, you can't know, test it. Like, trust me, these are the questions all of us have banged our head against the wall to wish that we could solve for. I really wish, like, if someone could come up with some like crazy algorithm, like we've all been down that rabbit hole to try and figure it out. Sometimes it's nice to know that like at the end of the day, it is a test. So a lot of times there's this feeling like, oh, I must absolutely get my, whatever I've put in the beginning and my first keywords, they must be correct. And if you do it and you're careful with how many keywords you're testing or what your budgets are, it doesn't always, and it will not be 100% correct out of the gate. And that's okay. And that's to be expected. It's all about, kind of testing and learning. And each product, to be honest, is a new learning curve.
Yeah, and keep an open mind, because the data sometimes, doesn't match your expectations, or doesn't even match the description of the product, and you need to go with what works. Yeah.
Yeah, good question from Asif. So this one should be pretty quick. I've noticed some ASINs from my auto campaigns are receiving good clicks, even converting well. I'm assuming product pages, because the question is, would you recommend creating separate product targeting campaigns to focus on those specific ASINs and optimize performance? My short answer is yes. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to that one.
I think Asif already knows the answer is yes. Yeah, Asif, that's a heck yes from us. Yeah, yep. Go for it.
It's a similar principle as what I mentioned earlier about like eventually this was not grouped, and then you identified some data that tells you to split it out, and that's true all over your account.
Got it. Here's a good question. Like, I don't know, this is speculation, but this might be interesting. What are your thoughts on Prime Day going from a 2-day event to a 4-day event? Do you think this will become a norm going forward, since the Bring Sing sale was also a longer deal period? My thoughts are like they're probably testing it, and then they'll see, because I feel like they throw up weird,
right?
Yeah.
They test based on behavior from last year, not the results, but I think Some people, most of the people that buy on Prime Day do not know there's a Prime Day. They notice when they look at, when they see the full page notification on their apps. I think that's one of the reasons why they extended it. So if it works, I think they're going to leave it.
I mean, Amazon's revenue goes up every single year.
Every single year.
So, they're constantly doing things to increase that. So, I can't.
Prime Day is always the biggest Prime Day it's ever been. They've never come out one year and said it's not the biggest. Of course, that's easier to do when you add a full day, because then technically, well, of course, it's bigger than last year. And they're a very metrics-driven company, so.
Yeah, and you would hope that a company like Amazon isn't doing it just to juice this year. Like, they've got some good reason to believe that if they did extend it, it would increase it and like make it even better in the future. I do sometimes think, like Brent mentioned earlier, are they like ruining Prime Day by just making it all the time? Is it going to be Prime Month in the summer? Like,
oh my gosh,
you know what I mean? No. So hopefully they're striking a good balance.
Yeah. I mean, for everything that they do seem to kind of base it off of data and consumer. I mean, like, I've always said, like, say what you will about how they treat sellers, and I will raise my hand and agree, but like, they do treat their customers very well, which is why they have the authority they have. I think they ever start diluting that, that's when they're that will be the beginning of the downfall of Amazon. Up until they do that, I think they'll continue to win. So hopefully this is, again, like, not diluting it. A good question on this, because this is something I assume everyone sees every year. I know we do, but how long do you expect to see a decline in sales leading up to Prime Day this year?
We started 3 days ago when it was announced. We already see it. We see it in the ACOS. We see, it sucks.
I think that's also getting longer. The pre-peak day slump, I also think is getting longer.
Yeah. People are shopping around, they're browsing, they're adding to cart, they're doing all sorts of things that without knowing they hurt us. They should. So they take care of us. But the same with the return.
Maybe a counterintuitive notion. Like, I've seen a lot of discussion in our communities about, we're really tired of Amazon announcing Prime Day only a few weeks ahead. We want to know when the exact dates are 6 months out, because we're sellers. I mean, Gonza, you understand better than us. Like, we want to make sure everything is lined up. All the dominoes are ready. So all we have to do is hit the lead one, and then we're cruising in a couple months into Prime. What if Amazon just said, here, every month or every year, we're going to tell you Prime Day was these days, and next year it's going to be these days. So there is no period where they announce it and then the interest suddenly plummets. Amazon can talk about it for months in advance, and everyone who is on the seller side and service provider side like us has things positioned and ready to go. I would prefer that, actually.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too. Because the pricing and everything. I mean, we gambled. We were hoping or waiting for this to be maybe 4 or 5 days later, and it's not. So we increased our prices to meet WAS pricing 30 days prior, but 30 days prior, from maybe 5 days later, a 5 days later event. So we don't know if we're going to get approved or if we'll have to be running bigger discounts, which, as I said before, we don't want to do. So not knowing, I don't really understand who helps. I mean, who it helps, not knowing. Definitely not.
I'm assuming it's because you will see as soon as they announce it, like Walmart hops on the bandwagon, Target does as well, a lot of other retailers. That's my assumption, that they can keep it very specifically Amazon and build the hype, and they get less. They're kind of keeping everybody else on their toes, or competition. I don't know. That's my gut
makes sense. That makes sense. So like everything else, it helps them more than anyone else. Yeah.
Got it. I skipped another question that was actually quite good. We have only a couple minutes left. I don't know how you guys are doing on time, but there was one. Oh man. I skipped over this one, but this was a good clarifying question. So what is the difference between negative exact and negative phrase? Anyone want to take it?
That's a Michael question.
Well, I think we all know, but maybe it's like, what's the other thing to layer on top?
My answer would be a rabbit hole that endless.
All right, Mike, go for it.
Sure. Negative phrase, it blocks that word in other words with that word in it. So for example, if I block the word shoes, I will also block running shoes and trail running shoes and any word with the word shoes in it, as opposed to negative exact, which is intended to only block that specific word. So if I do negative exact shoes, I'll only block the word shoes, and I will get impressions for running shoes.
Or it's singular too. Shoe as well, potentially.
Yeah.
Well, singular and plural, that's a whole topic about Amazon.
Yeah.
All of us have been frustrated with for years, right?
Yeah.
Data segmentation,
Yes.
negative, everything.
Don't get me started on that, but yes, very much so. And one thing I would say is that throwing it out there as a default, I would say negative exact 97% of the time. The way negative phrase can be very useful is that if you see like a specific phrase, like an example is your product is glass, but you notice like a whole bunch of searches and purchases for plastic or something like that, or a whole bunch of clicks for plastic. Again, you will be often surprised. This is what Brent and Gonza was saying. Like sometimes we're very surprised at what shows up. But there might be a world in which like maybe you're selling something that's applicable to Samsung or like, and it's not going to work for like Apple. And you know, like it's never going to work.
Yeah,
in those cases, negative
categorically block it.
Right. Negative phrase can be very powerful because you're like, hey, whenever this shows up as a key term, so you can use a single word, you can say, multiple, or, if you want a whole phrase, whenever this chunk or term shows up in the keyword, never show me there. That's where it's very powerful. But I would say 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be using a negative exact.
Yeah.
We had honestly a lot more questions rolling into the chat, but unfortunately we are at time. So I'm probably going to call it here as respect to our guest time. But again, I wanted to let you know if this discussion has been very valuable for you. Honestly, it's been valuable for me. Like Brent's like ninja hack tip out of the blue about using like radio TV ads. I would definitely recommend checking out Core. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat, by the way. For those of you listening on LinkedIn, unfortunately, LinkedIn does not allow me to drop a link, but you could definitely check us all out on LinkedIn. You can check out Core on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a personal message if you would like that link. But I highly recommend checking it out. They only open enrollment during a very select time. So you only have a 5-day window, it looks like, to
that
get
countdown is real. Yes.
If you want to, they are very strict about it. And also they do keep it very high level. So you are applying where it says apply to join. That is not a joke. It is apply. It's not a marketing tactic. It is a quality control thing. So again, if you're looking for high level to advanced, this is pretty much one of the only places on the internet that you can really have a discussion. Although if you still have Amazon ad questions, which many of you do, I see them in the chat. I am so sorry. We had limited time today. We show up here for an hour every single Thursday. I will be back here myself next Thursday. So as I show up early, ask your questions early so you can get them in. But with that, I really appreciate everybody. I appreciate all of you joining in today. I always appreciate the discussions and insights. And I will see everyone on next week.
Thanks.
And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.